Hello, Honor Social Ethics students. I'm Jeremy Dickinson, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Philosophy Clips. In this philosophy clip, I'd like to introduce Philosophy 336, or the Honor section of Social Ethics course to you, and I'll do so in a couple different ways. The first way is to say some syllabus-related things, and the second way will be to introduce the subject matter of the course. So let's begin with the first topic. Let's begin with the first topic of introduction, the syllabus-related information. So I'm assuming you've all read the syllabus, and I'm assuming you've all read it fairly carefully. So what I want to do here, instead of go over the details of the syllabus, is really just go over what I'm guessing to be the area of the syllabus where you have the most questions. And that's going to be with respect to the BWAs, the bi-weekly assignments. So let me say some things about those. So they are exam-like, they are non-cumulative, and they're not timed. So those are the first three things to note about them. Okay, they're exam-like, they're not timed, okay, and they are non-cumulative. So maybe I'll say something about the way in which they're not timed. What I mean by that is I post them on Friday and they're due the following week. Once you open them, you have until the following week to work on the assignment. There's no buzzer that's going to go off. The system won't shut down on you once you've opened it. I haven't set up the assignments in that way. And I've done so strategically. I do think that that it's helpful that you have plenty of time to do the assignments, and it helps the material really sink and soak in. And that's really what I want out of this class. I want you to understand the material, I want you to think about it, and I want you to write about it in a competent, careful kind of way, and I think that takes time. So the assignments are designed to span over a few days, and I'm assuming that you'll take several hours per assignment, but you can spread out the several hours over several days if necessary to provide really quality answers. The assignments, they'll expect of you about 500 to 600 words, probably closer to the 600 word mark. This is a writing intensive course, so 3,000 words is the expectation for the class. So 5 BWAs, you just do the math, it's pretty straightforward. If you were to write a 2.5 page paper, you'd get to the 600 word mark pretty straightforwardly. And we're thinking there 2.5 pages that are double spaced with 12-point font. Okay, so that's not too much writing. It may seem like a lot per assignment, but once you get going, I think that you'll see that you'll be able to accomplish the 500 to 600 words, no problem. And keep in mind that there will be different kinds of questions, and I take all of the questions into considerations when considering the totals that are expected of you on the assignment. So there'll be true-false questions, which will require explanation, justification. So that's going to take some words. Obviously, short answers and long answer essay questions will require words as well, significant amounts thereof. So you'll see that getting to the word count is not going to be a problem. Keep in mind that I expect that you ask me questions prior to my posting, and that after I've posted the assignment, that all I can really do is clarify what I've asked of you. So just like if we were to take a live class, in-person class, if I were to hand out an exam, I couldn't then answer a question substantively about what I've asked of you. I can reword what I've asked of you, but I can't tell you the answer to what I've asked of you. So the same thing is going to apply here in this online format. So be sure that you're keeping up with the reading and the video watching, and you ask me where you have any questions about what's been presented, okay, prior to my posting, because once I post, it's just like I've handed out an exam. Keep in mind that I need to keep you honest on the reading, and so there will be reading questions on the assignment. And I would strongly discourage using outside sources for my classes. I've been teaching online classes for over 10 years, and students who think that they can just go to Google to research the course material, they tend to do poorly, because the kinds of questions I ask are particularized to the way in which we discuss them in the context of the class. So those are all big picture BWA issues. things I wanted to touch on, things you may have had questions about that I hope I've responded to. If I've missed anything, just let me know. I'm happy to clarify as much as possible. But let's move on to the second part of this introduction, which involves just introducing some of the subject matter of the course. So this is a social ethics course. So it's an ethics course, and as an ethics course, it's a philosophy course. So philosophy is the subject matter that deals with big picture existence questions, big picture knowledge questions, and big picture ethical questions. So it might be helpful if I just say a few things about what philosophy is, and then try to zero in on ethics and social ethics in particular. So I'll be brief about this. One major subdiscipline of philosophy is known as metaphysics, and there we're interested in big picture questions like, does God exist? Do we have free will? Do we have a soul? Is it immortal? Why is there something rather than nothing? Okay, so we're interested in what exists, but what exists in a very general, ultimate kind of way. We're also interested in philosophy in epistemology. So epistemology is concerned with big pictures related to knowledge. So philosophers have, for as long as they've been doing it, they've been interested in whether or not we have knowledge and the degree to which we have it and how we have it if we do have it. So knowledge is a central philosophical issue, and the subdiscipline here of philosophy is called epistemology. I'll spell that for you because maybe you haven't heard of it before. EPISTEMOLOGY, epistemology. I feel like I'm at a spelling bee here. But epistemology is that part of philosophy that's concerned with knowledge. And then the third major subdiscipline of philosophy is ethics. So ethics concerns good and bad, right and wrong. I think that's perhaps initially too simple, but it might be helpful for just understanding what ethics is about. It's concerned with those everyday ideas that we think about: goodness, badness, rightness, and wrongness. And I'll say more about that in a minute. I just want to just recap really quickly. I'm trying to give you an account, an initial understanding of philosophy by thinking about its major subdisciplines, as opposed to defining the term philosophy, which many of you know just means the love of wisdom. I wanted to give you an initial account of philosophy in terms of its major subdisciplines: metaphysics, big picture existence type questions; epistemology, big picture knowledge questions; and then ethics, big picture how do we live questions concerning rightness, wrongness, and as I've noted before, goodness and badness. Okay. Now, hopefully we're in a position for me to just lock in on ethics here a little bit and say a bit more than what I already have. No doubt metaphysical and epistemological issues will come up in the context of thinking about ethical issues, but we'll deal with those as they come up. So I'll bracket metaphysics and epistemology for the most part and focus now on ethics: goodness, badness, rightness, wrongness. So in ethics, a completed ethical theory is going to have various parts, as you can imagine. So I'm going to say some big picture things about those parts. The first part of an ethical theory, not necessarily in terms of priority, but just in terms of presentation here, is what we call a value theory. A value theory is a theory of what's good and what's bad. And typically when philosophers do value theory, they're interested in whether or not there are things that are good by their very nature. And if there are things that are good by their very nature, then they're the things that we perhaps should aim at, or at least they're worthy of our pursuit. So historically, traditionally, happiness was taken to be this thing that is good by its very nature and was worthy of our pursuit. Many people, many philosophers still think that that's true to this day. There are other things that philosophers have identified as good by their very nature. One such thing is also virtue or morality. And so some philosophers would claim that virtue or morality, these things are worthy of our pursuit. There's more that we could say about value theory, but hopefully you've got a sense of it. It's going to give us an account of what things, if any, count as intrinsically good. Of course, it's also about what things by their nature are intrinsically bad. But the idea is once we figure out what's intrinsically good, it's pretty easy to identify what's intrinsically bad, if anything. It's just going to be the opposite of what's good. So if happiness, for example, is intrinsically good, then guess what's going to be considered intrinsically bad? Unhappiness. Okay? So now that's a value theory, and just a very, very rough introduction to that part of an ethical theory. Another part of ethical theory is what's known as normative ethics. That concerns action, that concerns providing an account of what, if anything, makes an action a right one. Now, or a wrong one, as the case may be. And the same thing will apply here as applied in value theory. Once you figure out what's right, then it's pretty easy to figure out what counts as wrong. So just to give an example of what may be, what explains the rightness of an action would be it bringing about good consequences. It bringing about maybe happiness in the world, or maybe some other things that would count as good consequences. So an action is going to be right when it has good effects in the world. Okay, a wrong action then would be defined as bringing about bad consequences. So you see how once you figure out what explains what a right action is, you're in a good position to account for what explains what makes an action a wrong one. And so when you do normative ethics, you're interested in what, if anything, accounts for the correctness or the rightness of an action. And I've given one example, the example involving bringing about good consequences. Of course, there are other possibilities involving having good motivations. So it might be the case that the right action is the one that flows from having good motivations or having good intentions. These are competing theories which would claim that it's the consequences that exclusively determine whether or not action is right. And then the theory which would have it that, it's the good intentions or good motivations that do so. But of course, you could imagine a theory that said, both can matter. Just depends on the circumstance, or depends on the context, or depends on the action, etc., etc. So that's just to give you a flavor of what's happening in normative ethics. So we have normative ethics, we have value theory ethics, and they're obviously related to each other. They can be related to each other. So typically when a philosopher does an ethical theory and they're working it out carefully, they're going to say something about how the two theories are related. So there are some philosophers who think that you just have to figure out what things are intrinsically good, what things are worthy of our pursuing, and you have your normative ethical theory worked out. It's just the right actions are going to be the ones that bring about those good things, and the wrong actions are going to be the ones that bring about the bad things, conversely. So there are some philosophers who hold that kind of view, but there's other philosophers who say, no, there is a connection, but it isn't as strong as that. And we needn't get into those kinds of details now. Again, just trying to give you a big picture sense of what's going on in ethical theory. So if you were to take, say, Philosophy 331 at ethics, which I also teach, you would be studying a lot of theoretical ethics. This is, though, social ethics. This course is concerned with applied ethical issues as opposed to theoretical issues. Now, it's going to turn out that along the way, as we deal with applied ethical issues, it's going to be handy to know some ethical theory to guide us in theorizing about the applied ethical issues themselves. But this course is dominantly concerned with applied ethical issues. So social ethics can be understood as that part of ethics which is concerned with applied ethical issues, applied moral problems. Problems like the fact that there are people who are extremely impoverished in the world, or the long-standing problem of whether or not abortion is morally permissible, right? Or the problem of whether or not animals are the kinds of things that we have the right to kill and use for food. And so this course will be concerned with the applied ethical issues. The theoretical ethical issues, they will find a way into the course, but we will focus on the applied ethics. So I hope that this video has answered questions you may have had, questions about syllabus-related issues, questions about the content of the course. If you have any further questions, see me in office hours, send me an email, be in touch. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.